You're trying to shame me again by asking me this political question.
You've repeated that again.
I think it's offensive. As a woman, I find it offensive. For my political choices, I've endorsed the man that I believe is best for our country. It's not Joe Biden. And you looked at the dueling rallies yesterday in Georgia. Laken Riley's family was with Donald Trump. They weren't with Joe Biden. The same guy yesterday that apologized for calling her killer an illegal, who wasn't illegal. And here you are.
All right, guys, so we got to talk about this wild interview between GOP representative from South Carolina, Nancy Mace, and liberal media propagandist George Stephanopoulos on state television station ABC News, okay? And we have to talk about this interview because it is going viral because George Stephanopoulos tried to ambush Nancy Mace with a Me Too question involving the Trump Jean E. Carroll case that found that Trump was civilly liable for assault, okay, against Jean Carroll. Now, that case, if you guys have been following it, it's extremely kind of messed up in multiple ways. One, considering the fact that clearly and obviously this is a part of the political attack against Trump. This is a part of the political persecution against Trump. This woman, Jean Carroll, accused Trump of assault for something that happened back in the 90s, okay? And it was past the statute of limitations for her to actually hold Trump accountable for it. However, she decided to come out in 2019 or so and start accusing the president of, assault, okay? New York, because again, it's a liberal-run state that is trying to destroy Trump. They actually gave Jean Carroll a extra window of time to actually start to come after Trump. And that is what allowed her to sue him, okay? And Trump was eventually found civilly liable for assaulting her, but not for, okay? And ultimately, Trump ended up being found guilty of defamation because he tried to defend himself and say that, hey, I don't know this woman. I did not do this, okay? I am innocent, and apparently defending yourself is defamation, okay? And Trump is basically being accused of, because the judge basically twisted the verdict from the jury of Trump being found guilty of sexual assault, but not, and to try to say, well, the sexual assault that they found him guilty of, the layman would interpret it as, because New York's definition of is very restrictive, and that's why he wasn't found guilty of that by the jury. But again, according to the common person, that's what it would be considered, right? So now the mainstream liberal media is running with that and trying to say that Trump is okay, and George Stephanopoulos here is going to ask Miss Nancy Mace, who is a victim of, about how she can support Trump, although she is a victim herself, okay? And this is an ambush question that he put on Nancy Mace, and it's going to backfire big time on him in this interview with her. And I want to talk about it because this is one of the wildest interviews I've ever seen. Not very YouTube friendly, but we're going to cover it anyways. But before we get into it, we have to have a word from the sponsor of this video, Noble Gold. Have you guys taken a good look at the banks lately? Now, on the surface, everything may seem fine, but there's a whole lot more going on underneath. It's like looking under the hood of a car and finding a mess of broken wires and parts. The parts are loans for homes, cars, and the credit cards that we use. They're all hitting record highs. It's really scary when you think about it. Why risk your money for a tiny 5% when things are so shaky? This is where Noble Gold can help. They're like that friend that knows all about how to keep money safe. They suggest gold and silver, oldies but goodies in the finance world. Plus, they've got a sweet deal, a 1/4 ounce gold standard coin this month if you qualify. That sounds pretty cool, right? If you're curious, just give them a call at 877-646-5347. That is 877-646-5347. And don't worry, it's just a chat, no pressure. They will help you figure out if gold and silver are right for you. Or you can visit noblegoldinvestments.com and take the first step towards a safer, more secure financial future. And just remember, there's a risk with every investment, and there's no guarantee of any kind.
This is why women do not come forward. They are afraid.
Congressman, thanks for joining us this morning. And you've endorsed Donald Trump for president. Judges and 2 separate juries have found him liable for rape and for defaming the victim of that rape. How do you square your endorsement of Donald Trump with the testimony we just saw?
Well, I will tell you, I was at the age of 16, and any victim will tell you, I've lived for 30 years with an incredible amount of shame over being. I didn't come forward because of that judgment and shame that I felt. And it's a shame that you will never feel, George. And I'm not going to sit here on your show and be asked a question meant to shame me about another potential victim. I'm not going to do that.
It's actually not about shaming you. It's a question about Donald Trump.
No, you are shaming me.
You've endorsed Donald Trump for president.
Right.
Donald Trump has been found liable for rape by a jury. Donald Trump has been found liable for defaming the victim of that by a jury. It's been affirmed by a judge.
It was not a criminal court case, number one. Number two, I live with shame. And you're asking me a question about my political choices, trying to shame me as a victim, and I find it disgusting. And quite frankly, E. Jean Carroll's comments when she did get the judgment, joking about what she was going to buy, it makes it harder for women to come forward when they make a mockery out of when they.
Yeah, and it also makes it not as easy to believe them, okay? Particularly, again, in her case, I don't know what happened, but Trump denies it. He hasn't been found criminally liable for it, just civilly liable for it, which is a lower standard, okay? It does not take as much to find somebody civilly liable of something rather than criminally liable. But yeah, when she makes a mockery out of it, when she goes on mainstream level media and she jokes about it, I think that it makes a joke out of something that is a very serious subject. And I think that the way that she has handled all of this, okay, is not lending credibility to her allegations, especially considering how her allegations are for something that happened years ago, okay, that was past the statute of limitations for her to actually really do something about it. But yet she was given an opportunity to do so because of the fact that, you know, New York is ran by Democrats and they're trying to destroy Trump in any way possible. So again, I think Nancy Mace is bringing up some pretty valid points here, okay, that George Stephanopoulos is going to have a hard time dealing with.
Joke about it.
Doesn't it make it harder for women to come forward when they?
It makes it harder when other women joke about it, and she's joked about it. I find it offensive, and I also find it offensive that you're trying to shame me with this question.
I'm not trying to shame
you.
You
are.
at all. In fact,
I have dealt with this for 30 years. You know how hard it was to tell my story 5 years ago when they were doing a fetal heartbeat bill and there were no exceptions for incest or incest in there. I had to tell my story because no other woman was coming forward.
Just asking.
No victims were represented. And you're trying to shame me this morning.
I'm just asking.
And I find it offensive, and this is why women won't come forward.
Yeah, this guy, he really doesn't have anything to say. He can't really address that directly because he is trying to shame her, okay? Because if he wasn't trying to shame her, he would not have played that clip of her discussing her own personal experience, which was very traumatic, by the way. But the reason why he played that clip is to try to highlight her hypocrisy, okay, of supporting Trump despite the allegations against him and the fact that she is a victim, okay? So it is to try to shame her for her support of Trump. And him saying anything less than that, him saying otherwise is just not true. Because otherwise, why would you play that clip, right? Why would you play that clip? You're playing that clip to shame her, to say, look at this woman who's been a massive hypocrite because she is a victim, but yet she is supporting a man that allegedly did these horrendous things to another woman that is also a victim of that, right? So that's exactly what he's trying to do. He's definitely trying to use Nancy Mace's traumatic experience against her in order to shame her, okay? But see, again, what really gets me about this interview is like, well, why ask this question in the first place? Why ask this question? This question, in my opinion, doesn't really have anything to do with anything because Trump wasn't found criminally liable or guilty. He wasn't found criminally liable or guilty of it, right? And in fact, again, the jury found that Trump didn't actually commit, okay, by New York's definition. So why are you asking this question? Because we know that George Stephanopoulos would never ask a Democrat this question. Like, for example, why has Kamala Harris never asked about the fact that she supports Joe Biden, sees Joe Biden's VP, despite the fact that Kamala Harris came out during the Democrat primary and said that she believed Joe Biden's female Me Too accusers?
I believe them, and I respect them being able to tell their story and having the courage to do it.
Do you believe that the vice president should enter this race?
Grabian,
the
multimedia marketplace.
So I wouldn't tell him what to do.
Yeah, so could you guys ever imagine George Stephanopoulos or any mainstream liberal media host asking Kamala Harris about her support of Joe Biden, despite the fact that she came out and said that she believes Joe Biden's accusers and their Me Too allegations against them, right? So she said she believes it. Doesn't matter whether or not Joe has been found criminally or civilly liable. She said that she believes it, right? Kamala Harris also accused Joe Biden of being a segregationist. So why isn't Kamala Harris being confronted on her support of Joe Biden, who has Me Too allegations against him, who's been accused of being a racist? They don't ever ask Kamala that question, right? They don't ever ask her that question. Why not? Again, that's how you know what this is, okay? This was an ambush, okay? Nancy Mace said, hey, you know, I was going on the show thinking I'm going to talk about the 2024 election, and this is what they do. This is why you got to be very selective about going on these liberal media outlets, because they don't really tell you exactly what they're going to talk about, right? You know, they don't have to tell you the question, but they don't really tell you what they're going to talk about. They try to ambush you as much as they can. Again, especially if they're not on your team. I guarantee you they feed the questions to Democrats. But when it comes to people they disagree with politically, they just ambush you, right? So clearly and obviously they try to ambush Nancy Mace. And she basically turned this back around on George Stephanopoulos in the worst way possible for him, because it does look like he's trying to use her trauma against her to shame her for her political choice of supporting Trump. I think that Nancy Mace, as a woman, has the ability to decide whether or not she wants to believe the allegations against Trump. Okay? Just because Trump was found civilly liable, that doesn't mean that the allegations are 100% true, or that there is no room for doubt, or to say, you know, maybe I don't know, right? Personally, I don't know. Again, because the standard, okay, the standard is much lower.
Women won't come forward because they're defamed by those who perpetrate. Donald Trump
They are judged and they're shamed, and you're trying to shame me this morning. I think it's disgusting.
I'm not shaming you at all. I
told my story. It took me 25 years to tell my story. I was judged for it. I still get judged for it today.
I'm asking you a very simple question.
And I answered it. You're shaming me for my political choices.
I'm asking you a question about why you endorse someone who's been found liable.
It was not a criminal court. This was
again. If that's the question, George, why did you play the clip of her talking about her story, right? Again, this is the game that they try to play. Oh, no, I'm just asking a question. I'm just asking. Okay, but you asking this question along with the beginning clip it tells you everything you need to know about the agenda here. You're trying to expose her hypocrisy, okay? That's what you're trying to do. You're trying to shame her. That's exactly what you're trying to do.
It was a civil court, and by the way, she joked about the judgment and what she was going to do with all that money, and I find that offensive.
I'm asking you about the man.
But as a victim who's been shamed for years now because of her, you're trying to shame me again by asking me this political question.
You've repeated that again.
I think it's offensive. As a woman, I find it offensive. For my political choices, I've endorsed the man that I believe is best for our country. It's not Joe Biden. And you looked at the dueling rallies yesterday in Georgia. Laken Riley's family was with Donald Trump. They weren't with Joe Biden. The same guy yesterday that apologized for calling her killer an illegal, who wasn't illegal. And here you are trying to shame a victim. I find it disgusting.
I mean, you keep saying I'm shaming you.
You are. The question, it is.
How is the question asking you about a presidential candidate who's been
You're asking a victim.
And there's no question about that. And you've courageously talked about
because
that.
I think that's disgusting.
No, I'm questioning your political choices because you're supporting
shaming me. You're trying
someone who's been found liable for. Actually, I'm not trying to.
You are. That's exactly.
You're not
what
answering
you're doing.
the question.
And I think it's disgusting.
Well, you're welcome to say that, but you also have to answer the question. Why are you supporting someone who's been found liable for?
I just answered your question.
What is the answer?
He was not found guilty in a criminal court of law. It was sexual abuse. It wasn't actually. By the way, and E. Jean Carroll joked about all the money she's going to get and made a mockery out of this case. And I think that's offensive. There's a reason why women don't come forward. And when you have someone who says that they make a mockery out of this civil court judgment, It's offensive to other women. It makes it harder for other women to come forward when another woman has made a mockery of it.
You said women don't come forward because they are afraid. They are afraid because they are defamed
and shamed,
by those
like
who
you're trying to shame me this morning.
They are afraid to come forward, as you said, because they are defamed by those who commit the. That's what Donald Trump has been found guilty of doing.
He defended himself over that and denies that it ever happened, but he was not found guilty in a criminal court of law. It was a civil judgment over sexual abuse. So is that the distinction you're making? A civil judgment is okay, but a criminal judgment is not? This is different.
Well, again, they're different standards. Okay, so I mean that is the distinction. They're not the same. So to pretend like it's the same standard is dishonest. They are different standards. These standards are much lower when you're talking about civil liability versus criminal liability. Okay, and that has to be noted because, again, that there's a difference in the standard. Okay, it's one thing if Trump was found criminally liable. Okay, this is probably a different conversation. But we're talking about a civil case that happened in a state that clearly and obviously is hell bent on trying to destroy Trump in any way possible. They're attacking him on all fronts. So again, when you have that happening, context is important. Context is extremely important. And the context that Nancy Mace is giving here is correct. You know, it's just crazy to me how George Stephanopoulos here has the cojones to continue with this question, this line of questioning. Okay, especially considering how it's clear and obvious he's trying to use Nancy Mace's traumatic experience against her in order to shame her, okay, for her choices, her political choices, who she wants to support. Because, again, I guarantee you, this would never be acceptable for a conservative host to continue to press a Democrat on a question like this in regards to her support for a Democrat that was found guilty of these types of allegations. I guarantee you, they'd be losing their mind. They'd be saying, oh, this person's mansplaining. You're trying to mansplain to a victim, right? And usually, I don't like when Republican women pull this type of card, you know, against men, or to turn this back around like she's doing against George Stephanopoulos. But in this case right here, it's totally appropriate, right? It's totally appropriate to use the the victim card, the Me Too card, right? All the cards that she's pulling here, the woman card, it's totally appropriate to use it against Stephanopoulos, right? This is the perfect time to use it. If you're going to use it, now's the time to use it, right? In this situation right here, she's using it perfectly, right? So I don't even blame her for this because he deserves it. He deserves to be shamed because he's definitely trying to shame her based off her traumatic experience. Otherwise, he wouldn't have played the video. Him playing that video tells you everything you know about the intentions that this guy had with her coming on the show. He tried to humiliate this woman. He really did. And it backfired.
And they didn't even input all of the evidence into the civil case either, because some of the information she provided wasn't even accurate or correct. But to sit here and ask me as a victim to try to shame me for my political choices is wrong. And I think it's offensive. You can repeat that again and again and again. And I'm going to, because I find it deeply offensive. You don't find it offensive that Donald Trump has been found liable? I find it offensive as a victim that you're trying to shame me for my political choices. And I've said again repeatedly, E. Jean Carroll has made a mockery out of by joking about it. I don't find that funny. Well, it's not funny. You've made it perfectly clear. It's serious. You've made it perfectly comfortable. It's serious. It is serious. It's not funny, and it shouldn't be made a mockery of. But if you want to defend a woman who made a mockery out of, then you go ahead and do that. I'm not going to do that. Well, actually, what you're doing is defending a man who's been found liable. I don't understand how you can do that. Not in a criminal court of law. This was a civil judgment over sexual abuse, not, by the way, and she made a mockery out of it. Can we pull up the Washington Post headline right there? In fact, it has been shown. The judge affirmed that it was, in fact,
not legally. Not legally. He's saying that, well, that's what it was by the layman's definition, okay, by the commoner's definition, but not legally. Again, you know, and it's funny how the judge comes out here and clarifies this because, again, he did this to give the mainstream liberal media the room to come out here and to say, even though, again, the jury specifically found that Trump was not guilty of that, they're saying this, okay, the judge is coming out here and saying this to give the liberal media leeway to say, well, Trump was found guilty of this, right, civilly, so that they don't get sued by Trump for saying that, right? This is what the judge is doing. This is the game that they're playing. This is the game they're playing. They're doing this all in the effort to try to affect the outcome of the election, and it's disgusting. It really is. When you piece everything together that is happening, it is truly disgusting.
Donald Trump was found to have committed. That's just a fact.
That is a civil judgment, not a criminal court. They're two very different things, and you know better.
Well, I just showed you the facts.
You know better.
You show that you're very comfortable with what Donald Trump has done.
And what you've done is offensive to women who. What you've done this morning is offensive.
We'll let the viewers decide about that.
Well, yeah, I decided. And I think that, yeah, you definitely try to shame this woman. And it is offensive, okay? You should be ashamed of yourself. He really should. You should be ashamed of yourself for trying to use a woman's traumatic experience against her in order to shame her for her choices in regards to who she wants to support, okay, politically. And it really doesn't make any sense that he's asking her this question because, again, to me, this is irrelevant, in my opinion, okay? He would never ask a Democrat this question. He would never ask a Democrat this question. So, again, this is just one of those things where the mainstream liberal media trying to engage in a conversation that they probably shouldn't be engaged in, it backfiring on this guy in his face, and he deserves it, okay? He looks like a creep with the way that he tried to bully Nancy Mace with her own words about her traumatic experience. It's disgusting. It really is. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.